Good afternoon, everyone. It is a beautiful Wednesday, right? It's Wednesday. And my name is Georgina Maldonado, Executive Director at Community Health Initiative of Orange County. I give you the official welcome, and we are thrilled that once again, this is my second year doing the welcome for this very special celebration that we annually host through OC Forum, which is celebrating Hispanic Heritage Month. So let's give a round of applause for celebrating who we are, what we're about, and the interesting discussion we will be having in the next couple minutes. The OC Forum is a premier nonpartisan public affairs organization convening the Orange County community in an interactive environment to foster relationships, exchange ideas, and discuss public policy issues with the most knowledgeable and distinguished speakers and leaders of our time. Let me make sure I don't go off script. Our programs, both in person and virtual, have made the OC Forum a go-to place which fosters a diversity in its presenters, its membership, and audience. Speakers know they will reach a diverse and engaged audience. It knows it will hear speakers who are knowledgeable, relevant leaders in their respected fields in the most off-the-press topics that are happening in our society today. OC Forum is a catalyst to elevate public discussion, encourage collaboration, and inspire community and stakeholders to address and solve the complex issues of today. I want to take a moment to thank each and every one of you for being here and for your continued support of the OC Forum. Your engagement and dedication are what makes these impactful conversations so meaningful and successful. You will see a few items on your table, and to help you engage with the forum, we have a QR code available for you to scan and take a quick survey. Please know that these surveys we do review and we do take your feedback into consideration because it does help us give insight as to the relevant topics that you want to see to keep you engaged, but also keep you informed about what our next programming is about, and it helps shape the agenda for the coming year. Additionally, there are some comment cards on your tables. Staff will be collecting the cards so we can present your questions directly to our speakers. Please note, all of our OC Forum events are recorded and made available on YouTube, so those who are unable to attend may hear the valuable knowledge and ideas discussed today. Thank you. At this time, I would like to bring my co-chair for this event to the stage. It is now my pleasure to introduce my co-chair and our interviewer for today's event. Please join me in welcoming our OC Forum past president and current treasurer, Henry Mendoza.
Well, here we are again. I thank you all for coming. A lot of you I asked personally and said, you know, you gotta come and you have to listen to this. You have a great program ahead of you, so I'm excited, and I'm excited to see all these friends that are here that's supporting the group again. And Zach, I love that suit. That is awesome. That is awesome. I'd like to introduce myself just a little bit. Henry Mendoza, I'm a local CPA, been involved a lot in the community, served as a trustee for the California State University system. I've been involved in the community for close to 40 years. So this is something that I love to do, and especially with the Latino community. We've come a long way since we've been around, since I've been around. And I've been around a long time. Don't let the dark hair fool you. It's the gray hair here on my chin that's the real part. It's real. But, you know, there was trailblazers, you know, that got us where we're at. I'm related to Richard Alatorre, for those of you that don't know who that is. He's a trailblazer that worked with in civil rights and Cesar Chavez and the like. His connection here to UCI was he was a professor here at UCI, believe it or not. He was out of Sacramento and East Los Angeles. But he also helped, and I know UCI Health is here, he helped get and secure the hospital. It was something that he had to fight and get legislation passed in Sacramento. the reason I'm bringing this up is I have my niece that's sitting right there, his daughter, that joined me today to support her uncle. So thank you for coming. And, you know, we've all done things on the backs of others, but I think Richard was somebody very special to all of us, as it has been around for a while. One of the things I'd like to do, continue at this moment, to recognize my colleagues, my board members for the Orange County Forum. We can't do it without it. These people work pretty hard to put these things together, to try to put together great programs that are going to be interesting, keep you talking when you leave, and make it very interesting. But we want to be right there and make sure that you're right there to understand what's going on. I'd like to acknowledge you. So if my fellow board members, please stand up. I want to acknowledge you so that they're in this room. There we go. Also, I want to take this moment to acknowledge and express our gratitude to the partners that make this event possible. To all of you, the Orange County sponsors, they're up here. Without you, also, we wouldn't be able to put this program on. You're very important to us, and obviously this is important to you also. Keeping Orange County informed, we're not always the little brother of Los Angeles, we're making it happen. One of the largest economies in the United States is right here, Orange County. So, again, thank you very much for supporting us. I'd like to also thank UCI and UCI Health. They're our title sponsors for the 5th consecutive year. Thank you very much. I'm looking around. I'm not sure where you're at. Where are you? Right here. Right here. Thank you so much. You're always here, and you're always you know, the first one to say, I'll be there. All right. Additionally, I'd like to recognize a partnership with our silver sponsors, Customers Bank, Lionheart Escrow, and Star Financial, Rady Children's Health, Orange County, formerly CHOC. That was a little bit of a tongue twister. It used to be just CHOC, and the way I have it in my notes, it's Chaco, so CHOCCO. So Chaco. So CHOC, it's still CHOC to us. We love that. We love you and what you do in our community and what you do with our kids. Where are you, CHOC? There you are. Thank you. And where's my friend Jenna, one of our board members? She was here a minute ago. So, okay, she's probably not here. So, thank you for being here. At each table, you guys will notice that there's a little animal. It's a bear. And that bear is for people there. For those of you that have your birthday the closest today, that's yours. So, all right. So the chalk, don't fight over it. I'm sure they have others. All right. For those of you that all right, who got it? Hold them up. Who got it? All right, right here. Right here. So, there you go. So, I guess it's a happy birthday to everybody that has the little bear, or at least close to it. So, happy birthday from Chuck. By the commotion, I could tell this is a big deal. People hold up. And I think this is what you want to do, Jenna, is get everybody's attention and say, you are here. I called you out earlier. You were out, but there's my friend Jenna. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you for your support. Also, now I'd like to invite President and Executive Director and Promotional Partner for the Orange County Hispanic Chamber for here in this event. If I do these events for the Hispanic community, I always bring along with my friend and colleague, Ruben Franco. Ruben?
Thank you, Henry, and thank you, everybody, for being here today. I'm going to call out four numbers: 66 million, 28, 50, and 5 million. So there'll be a quiz after this. Henry will take, actually we'll have the UCI and Cal State Fullerton proctor the exam, but. So 66 million is how many Hispanics we have here in the US. 28 is the average age of Hispanics nationwide. 50%, and it's actually bigger than 50%, is how many K through 12 students we have here in the county. And 5 million is how many Hispanic entrepreneurs we have nationwide. That's why this event is important for us to hold, to have something during Hispanic Heritage Month where we can have conversations of where the Hispanic community is educationally, economically, politically. These are all very important for our community, and we're a growing community, and as you can see, myself not included, a very young community. So, but we all want you to work with us. When I first came to Orange County 24 years ago, when my son was 6 weeks old, I got involved with two organizations. One was the Orange County Hispanic Chamber, and the other one was the OC Forum. I always loved hearing different speakers speak on different conversations, things that you might agree with or things you might not agree with. But these are how we move issues forward, what we do as a community. And so we're very blessed as the Orange County Hispanic Chamber. We'll be celebrating our 40th anniversary next year. So please come join us next April 11th for our beautiful Estrella Awards at the beautiful Disneyland Hotel. If you guys haven't been there, we have over 700 people that attend that Black Tie Gala every year, and we'd love to have you there as well. If you're available next week, a week from today, we have our golf tournament on October 1st at Strawberry Farm. And just check our website for all the additional things that we have going on. But our community is more than just those numbers I talked about. We're a very vibrant community. We're a very entrepreneurial community. And like I said, we're very blessed to be able to work in this community 24/7 and get to do what we do. I want to thank our board of directors. If they could stand up. We can't get this done without our board. Still stand up and be recognized. I also want to thank Henry for the partnership with OC Forum and Georgina for the partnership with OC Forum. This is always a great event that we look forward to every Hispanic Heritage Month. And I do want to thank all of you for being here as well. This is a great opportunity to hear Gary speak. I got to hear Gary last week. He had his great event, Proximo down in San Diego, had over 4,000 attendees. Gary hasn't slept in the last 2 weeks. Gary sleeping is very overrated, so don't worry about it. But we look forward to hearing from this fine gentleman today. So thank you once all for being here, and we look forward to hearing what Gary has to say. Thank you.
All right, we're gonna continue. One of the items that I did not forget. Everybody's telling me, did you forget? I'm going to start with him. I've known him the longest, as he's taken a bite. Lou Correa, our congressman. Sorry about that, Lou. But him and I have known each other since college. We met in the weight room, and I used to be a little bigger, but I used to be a little bigger. But Lou Correa, our congressman over there. Maxaria Baltazar, Consul General of Mexico. She just arrived here, brand new to Orange County, so she's here somewhere. There you are. Our new consul, Mexican consul. Good friend. He made it here. He told me that he may be, and he's here. And last year he did the same thing. I needed a speaker, and he was there, and he did a fantastic job. Supervisor Sarmiento, right here. Also, Council Member Betty Martinez of Irvine. Where are you? There you are. And another very special person to me, and I I forgot to introduce her, and that is my daughter right there, Sofia Mendoza. I wouldn't have been forgiven if I didn't do that. All right, let's see here. All right, give me a second to get my stuff together here. Bear with me. All right, so now is the time that I'd like to introduce our speaker. Is there anything I've forgotten? Okay, so our speaker. So Gary here, I've met probably a couple years ago. He put on, those of you that have been there, himself and another partner, a very large conference called Latitude. And then I met him there and I saw him speak. And so this year, when I was thinking, who could I bring that could bring another perspective about what's going on with, I'm going to say, the Latino brand. I'm going to use your words. And I looked in the computer, and who came up was Gary. And Gary puts on, a series of videos taking on all these different topics. Gary is an entrepreneur, investor, and advocate for the Latino business community. He is co-founder and CEO of the National Association of Hispanic Real Estate Professionals, NAHREP. Most of you might know that, or should know that. They're the largest Latino organization in the nation with more than 58,000 members in 100 local chapters. Under his leadership, NAHREP created the Hispanic Wealth Project, a nonprofit committed to increasing household wealth and Latino community. In 2025, Gary co-founded Avance Global, an event platform designed to spotlight Latino leadership, entrepreneurship, culture. Avance Global created media entrepreneur and a New York Times bestselling author, Nelly Galan, which I met last week. The event platform builds the momentum of Latitude and renowned national event. Gary co-founded alongside international business executive Sol Trujillo, former United Airlines CEO Oscar Munoz, and music icon Emilio Estefan. Gary also founded Avance Sports, National Hispanic Construction Alliance. Both are business organizations focusing on advancement of professional and economic mobility of Latinos. He is a founding partner of Latitude Ventures, the largest venture capital fund in the country, and invests entirely, exclusively in Latino-led startups. He is the creator of the Hispanic, I mentioned the Wealth Project, the Hispanic Wealth Project, a nonprofit with a mission to advance economic mobility and generational wealth in Latino community. His videos series, which is the one I talked about, the Latino brand, shares his take on business, leadership, image of Latinos in America, which again, right now, I think a lot of us have, a little bruised of what's going on. So I think that's why he caught my attention. I said, I have to have him here. I have to have him give us his perspective. Gary has been recognized by Realtor Magazine as one of the 25 most influential people in real estate, and Latino Leaders Magazine as one of the 100 most influential Latinos in America. His videos series, Latino Brand, shares his take on all this. Gary grew up in Montebello, California, close to where I did, Whittier, and University of California, San Diego, Pomona College, where he played varsity basketball with Hall of Fame coach Greg Popovich. He lives with his family in San Diego. Gary, I'd like for you guys to, that was long, but he deserves it. Gary Acosta. Gary, I'd like to introduce. Please take a seat, and I'll join you right now. Yes. All right. So I think laying the groundwork a little bit of what I just talked about with Gary and our perspective. I think the big thing, laying this out, setting the tone, I guess. Latinos are just not a demographic trend. We're a brand. We're an economic force. We're a cultural narrative that must be owned and shaped. As I mentioned earlier, it's come a long ways from where we were many, many years ago. And his perspective on what we're going to talk about is Latino unity, state of Hispanic business and wealth building. All right, guys. I was not going to have something in front of me. All right. DEI in transition, retreat or opportunity. A lot of us have heard the DEI, and it takes a very negative connotation. And then ultimately, just talk about Latino and the Latino brand and what we're doing right now. So Gary, I introduced you, and you've done a lot. And I just want to get you going on Latino unity and the narrative. As the fastest growing cohort and population in the U.S., get unity around the criticism of Mexicans that we have with ourselves. And that's basically crab in a bucket, that the crab effect, as we call it, and, our ability to lift each other up. I know you wanted to talk about that when we first met. Let's hear what your perspective on all that is.
Well, thank you, first of all, to the OC Forum for the invitation, and to you, Henry, for the invitation as well. It's great to be here. I got a chance to meet some of you early on as I kind of worked the room, so it sounds like a terrific group, and it's a pleasure to be here. So to answer your question, let me first say this. I had the privilege to speak last year at Claudia Edelman's event that she hosts every year at the United Nations. And she gave me two options. She said, you can speak about housing and talk about the home ownership numbers for Latinos, or you can talk about Latino unity, which is another topic I'm hoping to cover at this event. And I chose unity because it's something that I've been feeling very passionate about, I've been troubled with. Every time that there is an election, we hear from the news media 1,000 times how we're not a monolith and how fractured and different the Latino community tends to be, which is absolutely true. But at the same time, it sort of suggests, and I think implies something that's not totally false, and that is Latinos do need to be a little bit more strategic in the way that we unify as a group. And so in that talk I got to give at the United Nations, I spoke about a statement that Ronald Reagan said back in the 90s, when he said, thou shalt not speak ill of thy fellow Republican. And I thought that was a very powerful statement of unity that I think for the most part has served the Republican Party well. And so I borrowed that, and I actually wrote a blog called, I said, rule number 1, thou shalt not speak ill of thy fellow Latino. And believe it or not, I got a lot of crap for that post, right? I didn't think it was that controversial of a statement. But it did, I think, start an important dialogue as to really what that means for all intents and purposes. The Latinos are obviously different. We come from different countries. We have different sort of political persuasions. We some of us like brown beans, some of us like black beans. There are differences. But I do think there are fundamental similarities and alignment that we tend to share also, right? We have a common language. We tend to have common values. We have common experiences. I think what we need to do as a community is really focus on those commonalities, recognizing that there will always be differences. But that's what I've tried to do with my video series, is really focus on those commonalities and really stress how much more powerful we can be as a community, how much more effective we can be in terms of our careers and our aspirations that we have in this country. I like to say, tongue in cheek, that Latino immigrants don't come to this country because they love our food or our music or our fashion. Latinos come to this country for one reason and one reason only, and that's the economic opportunity that's provided here, for the chance to provide a better life for themselves and their families. And I think if you stay focused on those issues, then the opportunity for us to become a little more unified around those issues is really there. So,
You said economic, but as we have here multiple schools, I think that's also something that they come for. A lot of times, like my parents, were very uneducated, and
sure,
everybody in my family has a degree. So that is the economic engine that's driving us and getting us to where we're at. So I think that's very much so. You know, I'm a CPA, and then I also, you know, I was also chair of the Hispanic Chamber of Commerce, and also chairman for the California State Hispanic Chamber of Commerce. And it's all about business and driving the economic engine of California. Again, California being one of the largest states and the largest economies in the world. We Latinos start businesses at a high rate. Take a little longer to scale them larger. Tell me a little bit about what could we do to help our businesses grow.
Well, I like to say that Latinos have entrepreneurship in our DNA. The data supports that, a very entrepreneurial community. The Stanford Latino Entrepreneurship Initiative, if you haven't heard of SLAY or LBAN, started to put out some pretty compelling data about Latino entrepreneurship a few years ago. And one of the things that they did notice in that process, to your point, is that Latinos are very entrepreneurial, almost twice as likely as the overall population to own a small business in a Latino household. So that's significant. But most Latino-owned businesses are small, and they tend to stay relatively small. So scaling those businesses, for whatever reason, has been a challenge. And so SLAY, addressing that, started to put together a platform that they called LBAN, which is the Latino Business Action Network, where they actually have a 10-week intensive course at Stanford University for Latino-owned businesses and provide them with information, guidance, and mentorship around scaling businesses. So I think there's a huge opportunity there for that to occur. If you look at Latino wealth in itself, you look at the two primary sources of Latino wealth in the country. Number one is home equity, so real estate, home ownership, and the second is small business ownership. So focusing on those two issues in particular, which is something that NAHREP does, is a priority for us, and I think something that'll serve the Latino community, and by extension, the overall U.S. population well.
Yeah, you mentioned LBAN. You know, I'm part of that, and I'm actually one of my clients now. But as I joined it,
Everybody's a client of yours, apparently.
so I deserve that. I deserve that. But when I went there, so again, giving you a perspective of what's going on in this country and the state is, you know, I joined it. There's 70 of us in the cohort. And first day, we're all excited to be there at Stanford. And I was blown away. They said, today, we'd like to make an announcement. There's $1 billion worth of revenue in this room. First time ever. And I looked around going, oh my goodness, we're doing that? And they said, not only is it $1 billion, the two highest grossing companies in there were Latinas. So Latinas are one of the fastest growing businesses in the United States also.
That's right, that's right.
Right? So even more than the male counterparts. So that is something that we're doing, and we're doing it very well. The Hispanic Chamber is right there with you to help you. So do you have any other insight?
Well, I mean, I think that, of course, going through that process of evaluating the scalability of Latino-owned businesses, you start to recognize why these gaps occur. Some of it is knowledge gaps and mentorship. Some of it is things like access to capital. And one of the data points that really compelled Sol Trujillo and I when we started Latitude was the fact that Latinos represent almost 20% of the US population, about 25% of the millennial population, but get less than 2% of the venture capital, investment capital. And you know, if you're a capitalist, right, one of the first rules of capitalism is capital is supposed to flow where the growth is, right? And all the data shows that the most significant growth that's coming from the US economy is coming from the Latino segment and the Latino population. So why isn't the capital flowing there? I think just addressing those gaps is another priority that we have as a group.
And I agree. And I agree. Another question, or another topic, and this is the one I think that needs a little bit of time, is DEI transition, retreat, or opportunity? What is your take on that?
Well, it depends on what perspective you have. You know, before I started doing these Latino brand videos, I used to write a blog. I used to write a blog every Saturday and distribute it to our network. And a couple of years ago, I started to write about DEI, long before Trump was reelected. And I wrote a couple blogs, and one of them was why everybody hates diversity initiatives, number one. And number two is DEI has a branding problem. Those were the two blogs that I wrote. Because I feel that, first of all, DEI, the ethos of DEI I support, and I'll get to that in a second, but the way DEI was presented felt more like compliance and regulation and not opportunity, right? So it should have been presented very differently, in my view, and I wasn't surprised that there was some blowback to the DEI activities. Now that said, when I say the ethos of DEI I support, well, DEI was never supposed to put people who were not qualified for certain jobs or certain positions in positions that they weren't qualified to have. DEI was supposed to eliminate artificial barriers that kept certain segments of our population from rising to the top. I believe in a meritocracy. I think we all do fundamentally, right? We want to see people who deserve the promotion and deserve those jobs and those board positions or whatever to get them. But there's no question that there are certain barriers that have existed historically that have made it more difficult for certain populations to emerge, right? So the idea behind DEI was actually very much, in my view, aligned with a meritocracy, right? Let's eliminate artificial barriers. One of the videos I try to, express and make that case with, I talked a little bit about the NFL combines every year. Who's familiar with the combines, right? So it's where the NFL invites all of the top prospects to come to one location in a totally unfiltered environment. Let's run 40-yard dashes. Let's see how much weight you can lift. Let's see how big your hands are. All these different metrics, because these scouts and these general managers know that all of these players play against different levels of competition. All of these different players have different backgrounds, have had access to different types of trainers and whatnot. And we wanted to get a chance to see how these players perform in a level playing field. That's the purpose of the combine. Well, we don't have a combine for corporate America, right? So the notion that our economy is a perfect meritocracy, notwithstanding DEI, is just a false assumption. It never is and never has been a perfect meritocracy. So when done correctly, the ethos of DEI is very much aligned with the principles of capitalism, in my view. But some mistakes were made, and to throw it all away, I also think is equally as dumb, and will also have a backlash, no question.
Yes, we've all had to deal with the backlash of DEI. All of a sudden, it's gone. The departments are gone. The people are moved to another position, et cetera, or renamed. So I think that is one of the videos that caught my attention. So when I discovered Gary online, I said I have to have him here in front of us because I wanted all of you to hear that. You talked about a potential gold rush. Focused on entrepreneurs and organizations. Can you please expand on that?
Actually, that video, for whatever reason, ended up getting the most views. It's gotten almost 1 million views so far. And essentially, the video talks about the fact that, if companies, in response to this, what I call war on DEI, end up abandoning their focus on diverse markets, Hispanic markets in particular, somebody's going to come in and fill that gap. Somebody's going to come in and gobble up that business at the end of the day. It's just too compelling. I mean, the data points that you were alluding to early on, I mean, there's I think it's almost 68 million Latinos in the United States right now. We are the youngest demographic in the country. We are driving economic growth across sectors, very entrepreneurial community, highest workforce participation rate amongst all demographics. I can go on and on. So if you, in your sort of, effort to try to align with some of the political, pressure that's out there and abandon your focus on the fastest growing segments of our economy, I said that's going to create a tremendous amount of opportunity for entrepreneurs who are focused on that. I tell this little comparison, right? You know, I started NAHREP 25 years ago. I was very, very young, like 12 years old when I started the organization. and when we first started NAHREP 25 years ago, one of the first things I did was I went to what I called a listening tour. And I went and visited with some of the largest companies servicing the housing industry. So the big brands, the big mortgage companies, the Fannie Mae's and Freddie Mac's of the world. And I told them all the same thing, that there was this tidal wave of Hispanic home buyers that was coming around the corner, and they needed to prepare for it. They needed to have the right products, they needed to have the right people, and they had to learn how to market effectively to this community. Every one of those meetings ended exactly the same way, with everybody nodding their head in agreement. And in the weeks and months and years that followed, none of those big companies changed anything. They did nothing about it. And I don't think it's because they didn't believe me. I just came to believe that, you know, big companies just don't respond to opportunity. They tend to respond more to fear of loss. But I will tell you when that changed. It started to change when a handful of companies that were startups and entrepreneurial. One of them was located right here in Orange County called New America Finance, headed by Patty Arvielo, a Latina. When those companies started to get large enough to actually take market share away from some of these bigger companies, then everything changed very quickly. Because the conversation inside of those companies went from Latinos are the right thing for us to do, to a war room conversation that said, if we don't figure out how to capture this market, we're going to continue to lose market share, and some of us are going to lose our jobs, right? Which is a completely different conversation. That's why I believe entrepreneurship, probably more than anything else, has the biggest opportunity for us, is the most effective vehicle for us to close wealth gaps and opportunity gaps out there. I'd like to say that Oprah Winfrey and Tyler Perry did more for Black Americans in the entertainment industry than 50 years worth of political advocacy. Why? Because they showed there was money to be made and they showed how to make it. And all of a sudden, every one of these big studios has divisions focused on the black market. Not the black market, the Black American market.
Well said. Well said. This is what caught my attention. You know, and I see it myself too, as a CPA, is my business has taken off with Latino entrepreneurs. I mean, and to the higher levels. All of a sudden, they've discovered that if they invest, if they borrow money, they go out to the market, whatever, merge, their businesses are starting to grow. And I mean, they're really growing. I think they're out indexing. I saw a lot of presentations this weekend talking about how quickly all of a sudden we as a group are moving. I know that our GDP is about $3 to $4 trillion here in the United States that is generated by the Latino entrepreneur and community. So what you're saying is absolutely correct.
Yep.
I think it's nothing that we should be running from. I think it's just something that we should be embracing, and just corporate America or the United States. Like I said, right now we feel a little bruised, but I don't think we should pick ourselves up and dust ourselves off. And
well, I mean, the bruised part about it is really what inspired me to start those videos, right? Because I thought it was important to have a consistent flow of communication that spoke directly to the Latino community. And that's what I do. In these videos, I don't sit there and criticize the administration or say what's wrong with the world or any of these things. All I do is say, this happened this week, this is what we need to do, basically. And this is how we need to interpret what's happening. And I just think there was some demand for that. I think that's proven to be the case. But when I look at the Latino brand, I use another anecdote, or I point to another anecdote. You mentioned in my bio that I was a founding partner of Latitude Ventures. So it's a $100 million venture capital fund that invests exclusively in Latino-led startups for as long as that's legal, but that's what we do. And I was part of the process of raising that $100 million. And that was a very enlightening experience for me, because I'm not a venture capitalist by trade. I started off in the mortgage business, the mortgage finance business. I'm a housing guy. But I wanted to be a part of this because, first of all, I thought it was needed. Second of all, I felt that our platform had access to capital that maybe others didn't have. And there was a lot of reasons why I thought that was important. So we did it. But let me tell you, I organize events like this. Asking for a sponsorship is very much different for asking for $10 million worth of investment capital. And that's what we are asking these institutions. And I learned a little bit about that whole process. I learned there was roughly $72 trillion worth of investment capital floating around the globe. And a relatively small number of people control a lot of that capital. And there's a lot of pressure on them to invest that money into things that'll provide them with a good return on that investment, right? It's just, that makes sense. So I asked myself, why would they want to invest in a community that was full of problems? If the perception was that Latinos are a community that's full of problems, we all have immigration problems, we all have problems with the law, we all have financial problems, why would we be surprised that it's been next to impossible to raise capital for our various businesses and sectors and funds and whatnot? That plays a big role in this. And I did, maybe this is politically incorrect, but I do that every so often as well. And people let me know. But I said, look, conversely, when that brand is positive, amazing things happen. And I pointed to the Indian community, Asian Indian community. Less than 1% of the US population is Indian. The CEOs of Microsoft, of Google, of Pepsi, I can go on and on. How many Fortune 100 CEOs are Indian Americans? Indians. How is that possible? How is it that, are they just that much better than the rest of us? There's not a single Latino capable of holding one of those jobs? Or is it more likely that a narrative emerged in the boardrooms of Fortune 500 companies that these Indian executives are pretty good at running big companies? Believe it or not, it's that quick and that simple. So I really started to think about the importance of getting control of our own narrative, putting data out there that was accurate and positive, and really making sure that we're doing everything that we can to convey our community in a way that is true and accurate and transparent and positive, right? Because we're dealing with the fact that that perception historically has not been great. And we gotta own that. And now it's on us as leaders of our community to change that.
I think that deserves applause. I believe you're right on. I listened to your videos, and I think we're right on. I've seen us move over the years. I've been around long enough to watch the needle move. And like I said, I see it in my business. I keep going back to my business because, we can talk like, if you've gone to school sometimes and the professors tell you about something and you're like, I don't know, But, I'm in the trenches every day and I see it. I see it and I see the movement of the needle. And, I think the perception of what we're doing as a group and as businesses also. You talked about home ownership. And that is what you do and you've done. Can you maybe expand a little bit on that and tell us about home ownership? You threw out some numbers, but I think a little more about what is going on in the Latino market and home ownership.
Well, home ownership is a great example for us to point to, or the real estate market in general. So I will point to a report that came out by the Urban Institute 3 years ago. And they're a think tank based in Washington, D.C. So this isn't us. This is an independent think tank that, by their own analysis, projected that 70% of net new homeowners over the next 20 years will be Latino, nationwide. Right? So that is not a niche anymore, right? That is driving the housing market now and for the foreseeable future. And they supported that thesis primarily by a couple of different things. Number one, again, the youth of the Latino population. If you look at when most families enter the homeownership market, tends to be right around mid-30s, early to mid-30s. Maybe now that's getting a little bit older. Latinos' average age is less than 30, So an argument can be made that Latinos are just starting to enter those prime home buying years. The second thing is the sort of intangible. Fannie Mae produces a report every year on consumer sentiment. The Latino population has consistently out-indexed the overall population in terms of their enthusiasm for homeownership. Even during the Great Recession, Latinos never lost their desire for homeownership. I think that has a lot to do with, number one, the immigrant population. Again, immigrants come to this country specifically for economic opportunity, and owning a home is at the top of that list. But also, I think the family element, the fact that Latinos are such a family-oriented community and the home is the center of the family experience, just prioritizes home ownership at a very high level for Latinos. So for those reasons, Latinos are driving growth in the housing market in a way that I think is greater than any other segment of our population. Now, that said, Latinos have roughly a 50% home ownership rate, and the overall home ownership rate in the country is about 63%. So there's a home ownership gap that exists. But again, that's a little bit misleading because you're not comparing apples to apples. If the average non-Hispanic white family or individual is like 42 years old, and the average Latino is 28 years old, then a lot of that gap can be contributed to that age gap. So if you look at it in an apples to apples comparison, if you look at just Latinos over the age of 40, their home ownership rate as compared to white Americans, that gap shrinks dramatically. And the only difference there probably has to do with generational wealth and the fact that Latinos don't have as much generational wealth, so therefore that gap is still there, but is significantly less. And over time, we actually see Latinos changing. You want to know one small demographic or age bucket where Latinos actually have the highest home ownership rate in the country over every other demographic? The age is 18 to 21. So the home ownership rate in that age bucket overall is pretty low. But Latinos in that age bucket have the highest home ownership rate amongst their peers. So Latinos are also buying homes at a much younger age. Maybe not so much here in Orange County where the average house is $1 million, but.
All right, I think we have a little bit of time, so I'm going to go into some of the other ones. We were looking at ourselves, and I have a lot of questions, and we didn't think we were going to make it, but I think we're on a roll. You guys okay? So, innovation and entrepreneurship. You said Latinos lead the new entrepreneurial era, especially with the rise of AI. Can you talk about the shift and what's going on with that?
Yeah, so AI is, it is a reality. It can be scary, for sure. It can be very invigorating. I saw a presentation at our conference this weekend from a futurist. His take on it is very positive. He talked about advancements in medicine and so forth, and the promise that it holds for all of that. So that's all good. But we also see the stories about how many people are going to be displaced and how many jobs are going to be eliminated. There's no question that that's a little bit unnerving. But here's my take on it. And I was invited to speak at a conference on AI and cryptocurrency like 2 months ago in DC. And I honestly asked, why do you want me? I'm like a third grader when it comes to AI and cryptocurrency. But they wanted to have a conversation on the stage specifically around demographics and gaps and technology adoption. And so I said, yeah, and I kind of wanted to go anyways just to learn and be a part of it. And I had a fireside chat like this, and the first question the interviewer asked me is, he said that Latinos have historically been slow to adopt to new technologies. How do you feel about this transition to AI and whether or not Latinos are going to be left even further behind? And I said, look, I'm going to push back on that notion a little bit, that Latinos are slow to adopt to new technologies, because I think that perception became a thing right around when the internet really became a force, right? Late 90s, early 2000s. And you needed a desktop computer, and you needed access to broadband, and you needed the money to be able to pay for all those things. So I think that gap was more economic than it was cultural or anything else. But I'll tell you when those numbers changed. And that's when we went to wireless technology, right? When things went wireless. And I remember reading articles during that time, which was, 2005, 2006, that wireless technology actually gave the opportunity, the potential for underserved communities here in the US and third world countries to possibly leapfrog over more industrialized communities because they didn't have any legacy to undo. Remember, the US had just invested like $1 trillion in fiber optics just immediately prior to that. So the US had to basically undo that to be able to move straight, whereas lesser established communities with less infrastructure could go straight to wireless technology. And if you look at the Latino numbers in terms of mobile technology and in terms of social media and some of the more recent innovations, Latinos are actually out-indexing, again, the overall population. So I think the same opportunity exists with AI. And the early data shows that Latinos are actually adopting to AI faster than the overall population. And I point 100% to the youth of the Latino population as being the reason for that. So this gives us the potential, Henry, the potential. It's not going to happen on its own, and I don't think it's guaranteed to happen. But AI gives us the opportunity to close gaps at a faster rate and actually leapfrog other segments of the population if we are strategic about it.
And I agree. As far as the technology goes, I mean, I always give my stuff to my daughters and ask them to fix it for me.
So do I.
So your point is very much taken. Absolutely. So I think AI, great points. I think leadership. You describe leadership and accountability. What does it look like to practice Latino leaders in business?
Well, I mean, I think one of the things that NAHREP contributes to the Latino population and community here in the United States is leadership development. It wasn't necessarily what we sort of thought of initially, but it kind of grew organically. So NAHREP every year, and so NAHREP has 100 local chapters throughout the country. The chapter presidents get to serve a one-year term. One thing that differs, by the way, NAHREP from other Latino business organizations is our chapter network is not independent. So unlike chambers where the local chambers are independent corporations that have their own boards and operate independently and have an affiliated relationship with the national chambers, we're not structured that way. All of our chapters are branches of the national organization. The database is centralized. The budgets are all centralized. It gives us much more capabilities to be able to disseminate information much more efficiently, mobilize the group a lot faster. So the organization, I think, has done a good job with that. Every year, we graduate almost 100 chapter presidents, right? These individuals have had the opportunity to manage a board, to hone their public speaking skills, to interface with elected officials, ours left, but the elected officials, work with corporate sponsors and whatnot. These are skill sets that are difficult to come by, but are incredibly useful in building a business, in becoming a leader in your community, and so forth. So leadership development is a core deliverable that we focus on. And the principles around leadership are something that I think has been a little bit lost. And I did do a blog recently about accountability. I believe that that is the primary skill set, attribute that any great leader has. At the end of the day, they own, basically, the outcome of what it is that they're in charge of. And there's a book called Extreme Accountability. And I grew up with, I was taught by my teachers, one of them who was Greg Popovich, the Hall of Fame coach. So I was very fortunate in that regard, what extreme accountability actually means, right? It means that if you work for me, Henry, and I give you a project or assign a task to you, and you do it differently than I wanted you to do it, that's on me. That means that I did not express it to you correctly, right? Because if my life depended on Henry performing a task exactly right, I would have left nothing to chance. Henry, repeat it back to me. What did I just say, right? That is extreme accountability. That's what great leaders tend to do. And I think it's one of the fundamental disciplines that we teach our leaders at NAHREP. That, and we have another saying inside of NAHREP, and that is, there is no drama in NAHREP. We don't tolerate drama, right? If there's a problem or a breakdown, we fix it, and that's it. If you bring drama to the organization, you're welcome to be a member, but you cannot be a leader in this organization. There's no drama at NAHREP.
That's very good advice. Very good advice. All right, as we start closing, there are some cards there on your table, and we'll be happy to pick them up if you have any questions. So we can, Nara's back there picking up cards. So if you have any questions, please fill them out, and we'll get to them in a little bit if you have any. So looking ahead, if you want to give a piece of advice to the next generation, what would it be? And then also, too, what is your call to action in this room?
Well, for the younger generation, what piece of advice would I give them is spend less time on social media, would be number one. Number two, try things. You know, I think that, you know, young people, especially smart young people, they have a very specific idea of what they expect their life to play out. How did they expect it to turn out? And the one thing I can guarantee a young person is that it'll turn out different than what you're thinking. And I think the people that tend to be happiest and tend to do the best in our community are ones that have a very specific goal. So I'm not saying don't have one, but they are prepared to pivot, and they're prepared to seize opportunities when they become available to them. So the only way you can do that is if you try things, right? So those are the two things I would recommend for young people.
Okay, do we have any questions? Any questions?
Yeah?
Gary, thanks for being here, and thanks for your leadership on all of this. What's your feeling on corporate ownership of housing? I mean, like BlackRock, and the impact it's having on the housing supply.
You know, that's a good question. So in this environment, I don't love it. I think it's certainly contributing to affordability issues. So they gobble up a lot of the more affordable houses, and they tend to do it in clusters, and that drives prices up, and there's less inventory available for owner occupants. I truly believe in an ownership society, and this country is better if we all feel like we have a piece of the rock, so to speak. So I don't like it in that regard. But the only caveat I would say, it was those corporate investors that also helped stabilize the market back in 2011 and 2012, when the real estate market was in a free fall. So they set the floor and they established a foundation, and the market started to rebound from there. By the way, what do you think is the only demographic when homeownership rates were going down every year, 2008, 2009, 2012, there was only one demographic that bucked that trend in 2012, and that was the Hispanic population. They turned the market around. So not only did those corporates, a lot of Hispanic home buyers helped stabilize the market. So that's the thing, right? I hate to suggest that they're all bad, because right now it feels that way, but I've been around long enough to know that there was a time when we needed them. I just think we have to figure out a way to have some controls in that. And I think communities may have some leverage to help stabilize that, because we want communities full of owner occupants.
All right, I have a question here. You spoke about DEI having a negative connotation in the corporate world. How do you propose we change the narrative in our work and our community?
Well, first of all, by getting rid of these dumb acronyms, right? So as soon as we labeled all things, right, diversity, segmented marketing, Hispanic, all of them became DEI, is when we gave critics of those things the ammunition to be able to redefine what they meant, right? To redefine what DEI meant, right? So the acronym of DEI, I think, is dead. Let's just bury it, let's move on. Because I think most people, when you really talk to them, reasonable people, and there's a lot of unreasonable people out there, but most reasonable people, I don't care where you are in the political spectrum, believe in equality of opportunity, right? Everybody should have an equal opportunity, which is different from equality of outcome, right? Once we get into equality of outcome, that becomes quotas, that becomes something that I think at the end of the day is un-American. But I believe equality of opportunity is something that we all support, and I think we all would get behind fundamentally. So I think let's get rid of all these acronyms. Let's not allow people to weaponize them. Let's say it what it is. Let's just say specifically what it is that we're advocating for. And I think we're going to have less problems and less division amongst us.
Okay, I have another one for you. What does Gary's work, yourself, and research see specifically around Latinas, and is there a difference for their prospects, outcomes?
Latinas versus Latinos in general?
Latinas.
Well, first of all, Latinas are, you're right, they are driving entrepreneurship within the Latino segment, but they're also driving educational attainment as well. And I mean, I think that's a great thing, but I also get troubled. It's like, why aren't more of our Latino males, you know, pursuing degrees and advanced degrees and whatnot? I think that's part of the issue. But you know, look, I'll tell you right now, NAHREP has a full-time staff of 55 people. 45 of them are women. I think women get things done, man. That's just the way it is.
Okay, in today's environment where we can get access to information with AI so quickly, how do you formulate your own opinion and determine what's actually the truth versus a narrative?
That's tough. You know, what is the truth these days with social media, right? It's just like everybody has their own version of the truth. I think there is going to be blowback to that as well. I think people are fatigued with all of the bickering and all of the misinformation that's out there. And I do think that eventually there's going to be a blowback to where we are going to go back to demanding certain standards around truth, right? So I don't exactly know how that's going to play out, but I believe that, you know, in my heart. We may have some tougher times in front of us before that happens, but I still think ultimately we'll get back there. I think all the basic fundamentals of this country are going to survive this time, right? And we are going to go back to some of those fundamentals eventually. And maybe this process will have some good outcomes at the end of the day, because maybe certain things needed to change. You know, as somebody who invests in startups, right, we talk a lot about disruption, right? Disruption. Well, disruption isn't all bad, right? Sometimes disruption is needed. And I think we are absolutely going through disruption right now in this country, right? Across the board. Right? The way we view medicine, the way we view business, the way we view demographics, immigration, everything, we are reshuffling the deck at the end of the day. But I do believe in the American spirit, I do believe that we'll end up in a better place ultimately. The whole issue about truth, I think, you know, there's a way to acquire that to a certain degree. First of all, whatever you see on social media, assume that it is BS, first of all. And do your own research, right? Because it's not hard to find whether or not these things are supported by any real facts that are out there. I just think we have to get better. We're so good at like seeing something that outrages us and just reposting it, right? Right away. Like, wait a minute, this is BS. Why are you doing that?
It's AI.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, well, last question. I missed your Saturday's communication. I'm not sure what that is. Are you still doing them?
My Saturday communication? So I didn't release any new videos this past week. Thank you, whoever posted that. That means you are following them religiously. Yes, so I'm posting one tomorrow about Bad Bunny, which I think I call it a master class on Latino unity. So hopefully it'll be well received.
Before I answer the question, I call on you. We forgot Cody Mendoza from Congressman Derek Tran's office, wherever you're at. Thank you so much for coming. Okay, if you have a question back there.
No, I was just saying it was me. I was missing your community.
It's at the conference, just got, you know, and I try not to, you know, I record those videos, obviously, and I try not to record them too far in advance because the world changes 2 times over in a week. So I try to stay on them. So the conference was a disruption, but I'll be back on it this week.
A newsletter with it too.
Yes.
Yeah.
Do we have a question over there? Matt?
I was curious with the housing affordability issues in Southern California, how much
A lot. A lot. And, you know, we produce a report every year called the State of Hispanic Homeownership Report. So we look at different trends, including migration trends of the Latino population. So if you look at where Latinos are seeing the biggest spikes in home ownership, it's not in California, it's not in New York, it's not in Florida. It's generally in the Midwest and even some areas of the South, right? So Nashville, Tennessee, Des Moines, Iowa, the Twin Cities in Minnesota, Milwaukee, those are seeing the biggest spikes of Hispanic homeownership for two reasons, right? There's jobs there and there's affordable homes there. So we got to do something about that here in California because these folks are an integral part of our workforce, right? Also, of course, of our culture, but our workforce especially, right? These are young, vibrant, hardworking individuals that are leaving the state because of these affordability issues with housing. It should be priority number one on the governor's desk as far as I'm concerned.
I agree with you. I have young people in my household that are thinking how they're going to buy a house.
Yeah.
And you mentioned it at $1 million a pop. We have a couple more questions. You have a little more time. So over there.
I'll do it really quick. If you could wave a wand and in the next 10 years, like what would you change for Latino representation? Like what do you see that leadership looking like in the next 10 years?
I mean, so I believe both inside and basically adjacent to the system, right? So we need representation in boardrooms. Fortune 500 boardrooms is still tremendous amount of resources come from our biggest companies in America, and we need representation at the highest level of those companies. Obviously, we want adequate representation in our political environment, both at the federal level and all the way down to the local level. I think local level is even more important in a lot of ways because all business is local at the end of the day. So that would be tremendous. But I also think if I had a magic wand, the one thing I would change would be capital. If we can flow more capital to our communities for home ownership, for business ownership, for business growth, not only would that be tremendous for the Latino population, we'd probably see the biggest spikes in GDP that this country maybe has ever seen. So.
And I think that's a message to our bankers in this room. And there's a lot of you, you know, that's where, and I always tell people the bank is your partner, if you're a businessman. They invest in your company. And so you need to get somebody that really believes in you and they're going to invest in you. And that's what, you know, and that's what we need. And a lot of you are doing that. You've seen the opportunities that you talk about. So I think that point is great. Over there.
You're absolutely right about the Indian CEO thing. I'm Indian American and I'm actually considered the Indian American community leader within my community. I have to give a little insight within the Indian community. We recognize the rise of the Latino American community, that we have so much in common with our values of family, faith, hard work, and education. And my question to you is there any current outreach effort, active outreach effort to like Indian-owned business groups, networking groups, access to capital groups? Is that happening right now?
I hope so.
In the Orange County area? And if not, then I'm happy to help you with that.
I hope so. I will tell you. Thank you, by the way. Thank you for those comments and for your offer. I will tell you that we had a track on AI at the conference we just held that you were at, Henry. And I was approached by these Indian American business people who were in that space. And they were the ones who invited me to that event that I spoke about in DC. And so they curated a track for us on AI specifically. And they sent some very powerful leaders in that space to the event. I had a chance to debrief with them on the last day of the conference. They were very much impressed with the scale of our event and the people that showed up. And we are looking for ways to partner in a deeper way. They invited me to an event in Dubai. Very soft-spoken individuals. When I said I'd never been to Dubai, he like slammed his hand on the table, like, what? You've got to go. So hopefully we're starting that process because I think it would be great. And you hit it on the head. There is a lot of similarities in our value system that I think make it natural for us to work together.
And you throw pretty good parties. My daughter went to a wedding, but she started like on a Tuesday and didn't come home till Saturday. And every time she kept sending me pictures, and I'm going, when is this wedding going to end? You know? So, Hey, Gianna.
Hi, Gary. Quick question. So, it was recently announced that Rocket Companies acquired Redfin, and then Compass announced a major acquisition of like Sotheby's, Coldwell Banker, what have you. Curious about how these major acquisitions do you think are going to transform and impact that housing industry as a whole?
Yeah, so for those of you not from the housing industry, Rocket Mortgage is the largest mortgage company in the country. They used to be called Quicken Mortgage. And they, for the last 30 years, have built their company almost exclusively organically. But their new CEO, who was on the main stage with me at the conference this past week, made two major acquisitions. One was a big real estate firm called Redfin, and the other one was the largest loan servicer in the country called Mr. Cooper. So that consolidation now is going to have an impact. The other one was just announced 2 days ago. I thought I was going to sleep in on Monday morning, and then my phone started ringing at 4:30 in the morning and didn't stop until I answered it, because Compass purchased Anywhere Real Estate. Anywhere owned Century 21, Coldwell Banker, Sotheby's, Corcoran, several major brands, which would basically capture somewhere around 20% market share in that combination. Here's my take on that. So I think in the short run, there's going to be an impact. If you follow Compass, and I'm not going to get too granular here, but they advocate for a policy that NAHREP does not support. And this has been their flagship for a lot of years now. It's called something called clear cooperation. And clear cooperation is a requirement that if any agent that is a member of a local MLS gets a listing, they have to post it within 24 hours on the MLS so that other agents can see that listing within 24 hours. Compass believes that that shouldn't be the case, that they should be allowed to keep that listing within their own network for a period of time, and if it doesn't sell in that period of time, then they should be able to post it on the MLS. The problem with that, obviously, is that, and from my standpoint, the Compasses of the world are going to hoard some of those properties for their most favorite investors and for their most favorite clients. And those individual home buyers that are going to live in those homes are not going to have access to those listings. So this has been a big battle happening right now. Compass, now acquiring the largest network of realtors in the country, has more clout when it comes to pushing those types of issues forward. Now, I say in the short run, it's going to have an impact. In the long run, what happens with a lot of these consolidations in the housing industry is that a lot of executives are going to leave after that merger takes place, and they're going to start new brands, and they're going to start new mortgage companies, and that's just the way it happens. A lot of those new mortgage companies and new brands, have great relationships with us, have great relationships out there in the marketplace, so it tends to sort of dilute over time, and it tends to actually stimulate some new innovation and new brands in the marketplace, which I actually think is good. So in the short run, it's going to be tough. In the long run, I think it's going to be good.
One more question, Councilwoman.
Yes, so the city of Irvine is one of the most diverse cities in entire Orange County, so I appreciate your comments about DEI. I'm especially invested in DEI, and I have encountered the same issue about how the people misconception about what our goals in DEI are to just fulfill a quota, right? But on the other hand, on the housing side, I wanted to hear your perspective. We hear a lot about corporation and how corporation is gonna help or capital, but as a city, as a government, besides legislation from the state or federal, how can we help our communities achieve their dream of obtaining their first home?
So I think if we have one lever right now that we can pull, and it's a very complex question, and I think it varies from market to market. I think it's addressing zoning, right? So zoning was really created to help create more organized communities, right? So you don't have, there's order to those communities. But more recently, they've been a way to segregate communities, right? So we have wealthy communities, you have not so wealthy communities, and so forth. And everybody wants their property value to be strong, right? Everybody likes the wealth factor that comes along with home ownership. But we have to educate the community that having affordable housing in our communities is not going to be a negative. We need that workforce in our community for our community to thrive, right? And at the end of the day, there's not a lot of data that shows affordable housing brings down property values in any material way, right? We have to deal with infrastructure issues and so forth. But I think an educational initiative, really helping people understand the importance of having affordable housing in these communities for our community to function properly is critical. And it's in all of our interests to do so. So I'm actually advocating for a national campaign to address affordability and zoning issues that I think the federal government should deploy.
Okay. So the call to action, we talked about that, right,
Yep.
already? So we're there. So before I let you go, because I know what'll happen, everybody just get up. Janice, can you help me out? Our next event, when is it and what is it? If you could help me out. Or Nara, you want me to put Nara on the spot? Nara, I'll put you on the spot.
October, I think it's October 16th, it's redistricting.
Redistricting.
Interesting topic, I think, for everybody.
Absolutely, because I don't want to go back there because I know what's going to happen. Everybody's going to stand up and run for the door. So, okay, I want all of you, hopefully you enjoyed this. I mean, I went on a limb and grabbed him and said, you need to come out, and he took me at face value and came to Orange County. He's a San Diego guy, and he's all over the United States. And he came here to talk to you guys, and hopefully you got something out of it. I did. You feel great about what's going on because there is a lot of good things going on. That's why we're here, So, all our schools are here. We have a great education system, the largest economy, one of the largest economies in the world, and we're going to kill it. And I always say that, we're to kill it. But can we get a round of applause for Gary? I think he did a
thank
fantastic
you.
job.
Thank you very much.
All right, so I made my announcement, so thank you all for coming. I see all my friends out here. I see a lot of friendly faces. Thank you all for coming. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Henry.